Okay, today we do the rise of the Catholic Church. Okay, so again, what Paul's going to do is he's going to negate the power of Jesus. He's going to imprison the divine spark in the church. All right. So this is Paul, and there's a lot of mythology around Paul, how he's a martyr who went around the world in order to spread Christianity. Okay, we don't know if it's true or not. If you're Catholic, you believe it's true. The other thing about Paul that's really important is that if you read the New Testament, a third is either written by Paul or about Paul. Okay, there's more about Paul in the New Testament than there's about Jesus. And that's why we say that Paul is a true founder of Christianity. Christianity is a religion about Jesus, but not by Jesus. It's by Paul. And what's really important for you to appreciate is what Jesus taught and what Paul taught are very different. In fact, they're opposite. Jesus taught that the divine spark is within you. So if you want to save yourself, if you want to go to the kingdom, you must do so yourself. But Paul says, no, Jesus came to us in order to redeem us from our sins, the original sin of disobedience to God, way back in the Garden of Eden. And if you believe in Jesus, you'll be saved. It doesn't matter what you do. But you can do as much good as you want, but if you do not believe in Jesus, you will burn in hell. Okay? That's why you must believe in Jesus. And that's also why we must get everyone to believe in Jesus. Because by getting everyone to believe in Jesus, we are literally saving them from eternal damnation. As you can see, this is a really good business model because now you can expand really quickly. Okay? Second thing that Jesus taught is he cannot save you. You can only save yourself. He can guide you. He can give you some poetry that you can decipher, but you must seek truth yourself. And what Paul taught is don't think for yourself, just do what everyone else does. He believed the most important thing is for the church to be cohesive. Okay, for everyone to obey the word of Jesus, which is really the word of Paul. And the third thing is, and this is really important, Jesus teaches us the rich cannot enter heaven. Why? Because to enter heaven, you must focus on your own spiritual rejuvenation. But the rich only care about the here and now. They only care about the material acquisition. And as such, they become blind to their spiritual needs. And so they cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Remember, Jesus tells a story of how the God has prepared a great feast for us, but the rich won't go because they're too busy making money. Paul teaches us, no, guys. It's the rich which will lead us to the kingdom. Why? Because the rich can finance the spreading of Christianity. What matters is metrics that help us spread Christianity. How many souls are we saving by measuring how many people we're converting? Okay? How cohesive is our church? That's all Paul cares about. Paul is a business person. Okay? Jesus is a prophet, but Paul is a business person. And so it is Paul really that is the spiritual God of Christianity. Okay? Not Jesus. Another thing that you need to appreciate is, at this time in history, maybe the year 40, 50, there are lots of different Christianities because Jesus taught us that the kingdom of heaven is within you, right? So it's all very diverse. It's all very democratic. And what's really important is a lot of the early leaders are women, okay? People like Mary Magdalene. They tend to be wealthy and they tend to be very charismatic as well. But by the time you hit Paul Christianity, it's anti-woman, it's a strict hierarchy, and it's orthodoxy, okay? So, in other words, you may have heard that early Christians were persecuted. Guess what, guys? They were being persecuted by Paul, okay? They weren't being persecuted by the Romans, they were being persecuted by Paul. And at this time in history, the Catholic Church, okay, Pauline Christianity, it's only a very small minority. Because for most people, the Christianity of Jesus is much more appealing than the Christianity of Paul. Jesus taught freedom, empowerment, liberation. Paul taught obedience, discipline, sacrifice, okay? So Jesus is far more appealing, but because Paul is being supported by the Roman Empire, he wins, okay? What Paul will do is not only persecute other Christianities, but he will quickly spread his Christianity with the help of the Roman Empire. All right, so as you can see, what's going to happen is in the year 30, when Jesus dies, it's a very small group of people, but it spreads really quickly, okay? And Paul will build the foundations for this great empire that in about the year 300 reaches its peak, okay? In about the year 300, what will happen is Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire. And this is the beginning of the Catholic Church. But it's Paul that built the foundation for this growth. Okay, so as you can see, Jesus, he's spreading his poetry, and because his poetry is easy to memorize, his poetry is spreading really quickly throughout the empire, okay? But what will happen is that once Paul builds the structure of Christianity, the church system, based on the paterfamilias system of the Romans, it will spread even quicker. And eventually, these two Christianities will come into conflict, and eventually Paul's system will win out until it conquers the entire Roman Empire, okay? All right, so scholars agree that Paul is the founder of Christianity. But there are three mysteries to Paul that scholars can't really answer, okay? The first question is, why would someone like Paul, who is a literate and wealthy Hellenized Jew, why would he join a movement of illiterate Jewish peasants? Okay, the scholars don't really have an answer for this. Second question is, we know that Paul was a fanatical Pharisee, okay? He was hunting Christians, but then he converts to become a fanatical follower of Jesus. Why would he do that? Okay? And the third mystery is, and that's the most important, is he spends his entire life promoting Christianity around the Roman Empire. Where did he get the money to do this? Because not only did he go, but he also had secretaries who went with him to take notes. Where does the money come from? Okay, so if you just do some basic game theory analysis, he's clearly a spy, okay? Clearly a spy. He's an agent of a power. The question for us, though, is who is he working for? The easy answer seems to be the Roman Empire, but in fact, you could also make the argument that he's working for the Jewish leaders, okay, the Jewish priests as well, okay? So we'll go over this.